Welcome to Film Strip. These podcasts are spoiler-filled as we discuss the plots, characters, and themes of the films in review. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504(c)(2), Title 17.
Welcome to Film Strip. I'm Jay.
I'm Ron.
And this is our review of Missing in Action, starring Chuck Norris, M. Emmett Walsh, David Tress, Leonor Kasdorf, Ernie Ortega, and James Hong. Directed by Joseph Zito, released in 1984 on either $1.5 million or $3 million budgets. The cocaine market's volatile, kids. But it grossed $52 million at the box office and had two sequels, though there's definitely a story to that. Ron, I feel like we've danced around Missing in Action since you came on this show back with the American Ninja review. So what's your story with this movie, man?
It's weird. Like, of the canon shot in the Philippines movies, this is the one I've probably watched the least. I'm fairly sure that I know I've seen it several times. It's hard to forget, but it's not. If I was going to watch an action movie, it was going to be ninjas back then. And as much as I do like Chuck Norris and did enjoy Chuck Norris's movies, I was a ninja kid. I don't know how else to explain it. If you do enough martial arts, and watch enough Ninja Turtles, you're gonna want to be a ninja kid. So that was always my default choice. But Chuck was a good standby, especially for like my dad or my family when it was VHS movie rental time.
Yeah, fun fact, by the way, I've never seen a single Ninja Turtle movie, anything. The most Ninja Turtle thing I've ever seen was the Vanilla Ice video. I've never seen any of the Ninja Turtle stuff. So maybe someday we can break the ice on that.
I mean, there's one coming out apparently, so maybe.
Yeah, I mean, they seem to crank a new one out every 8 or 9 years. But this was definitely one of those that got like VHS rental, because my older brother was much more aware of Chuck Norris than I was when this came out. He had seen The Octagon, and I think he had seen him in Bruce Lee movies, and he knew who he was. And so my dad rented this, thinking, oh yeah, this is like, fun teenage and non-teenage boy. This is boy movie action, right? And it definitely was. And then I think not long after that, or maybe a year or so after, I can't remember what, I saw Missing in Action 2, the beginning, on like Showtime or something. And I thought, oh wow, what's a prequel? I had no idea. Only to come to find out years later, like they actually wanted that one to be the first movie, and then realized that it was a piece of crap and decided, no, let's go with this one as the initial release. So what's the story behind that? Because I think Braddock Missing in Action 3 is like is a total different thing than Missing in Action and Missing in Action 2, the beginning.
Braddock Missing in Action 3 was, I believe, directed by Aaron Norris, Chuck's brother. But I will say that what happened was they took Missing in Action 2, the movie we know as Missing in Action 2, to test screenings, and it bombed hard. People just hated it. And they said, well, we've already filmed these two movies back to back. If we roll this one out first, it's going to kill the franchise. We're just going to have a dud on our hands regardless. So let's do the second one first because it's the better one.
Yeah. In
the hands of Joseph Zito of Friday
and the Invasion USA fame and other Golden Globus type projects.
Yeah, he was a go-to.
His Friday the 13th. I will argue to anybody that if you've never seen a Friday the 13th movie, you really should just start with that one and maybe end with it too. I mean, because if you just want a Jason movie, well, 4 gives you all of it. Like you get the little flashbacks from the other ones, and you get the most competently made looking one of that Paramount set in a lot of ways. You don't get Kane Hodder and all that stuff, but I don't know that's a different era of Jason. As we say, like if you want prime Jason, I think he made the fun one and the good one. And I liked Invasion USA. I thought it had a lot more going on than maybe your standard, dumb action movie that it was pitted as. And this movie was definitely a hot button, man. 1984, we were still very raw about Vietnam in culture and everything, and pop culture was starting to reflect that. Things like First Blood and movies like this, and The Deer Hunter had been out a few years before, but I mean, we were still grappling with what that meant. And when you throw in a guy like Chuck Norris in this movie where this is as Ronald Reagan as you get an action movie from the 80s, is we're going to go get them. And,
well,
no, I do not. That's what I was about to ask
right?
you. Is there a backstory to this?
Chuck Norris's brother died in Vietnam.
Not Aaron, obviously. So I did not know he had another one. Brother, so this is news. Okay.
Whose name escapes me, died in Vietnam in 1970, and he told Chuck, who was also I believe Chuck was also in the military around this time too, a little bit later, but he told Chuck, "I'm going to die over here. I'm not going to come back," and he was right. And after that happened, Chuck always ended up carrying kind of a torch for Vietnam veterans and MIAs and KIAs from Vietnam in that era. Kind of like how John Wayne always felt guilty that he didn't do anything in World War II except, ride horses. And he didn't even bother to join like the Actors Corps or whatever. And so he made the Green Berets in like 1970 to kind of glorify the guys fighting in Vietnam and all that stuff. Well, the same kind of deal with Chuck Norris. It turned him right wing or further right wing and made him a very rah-rah Reagan sort of dude because, he saw what happened to those veterans and he saw how they were treated and he saw how his brother died and felt little to no like support for going to fight in a war that he didn't necessarily.
No, and that's an excellent point. I did not know that at all. And it actually adds a lot more weight to this because much like I think Invasion USA devolves into this like action set piece and just this one man army taking on this other guy. There's actually a lot going on there that we talked about in our review all those years ago. And there's a lot in this movie that is definitely hitting a nerve. It's kind of like if you only think of Rambo from the caricature of John Rambo, but you don't know the story of First Blood. And, the guy that wrote that, David Morrell, was a college professor and he wrote it about ex-vets that were in his class. And not that any of them, were John Rambo, but he would talk to them and got to wondering like, man, if the way these guys are getting treated, it's awful. And what if one of them snapped, And so the fact that Norris has such a close tie to this adds a lot more gravity to it because this is a story definitely that is not just pro flag waving America or whatever, but it's very much we took people over there a lot against their will. That was the last draft we had and as a country, and a lot of them didn't come back and we didn't bother to explain to anybody why. And we kind of just washed our hands of it and walked in a lot of ways. At least that was some of the perception. And so to use that as a vehicle for a movie about like a one man making a difference, in a lot of ways it is, let's take an American ninja and put him in a James Bond kind of rescue situation. It's not a bad vehicle. It's not a terrible wrong-headed idea.
And it's interesting because I feel like a lot of Chuck Norris's choices have been made because he saw how people were treating these returning veterans. And it wasn't just the indifference from the politicians. It was active hate from, hippies and the anti-war movement, and in some places anyway. And I imagine all it takes is one dude in the crowd to spit on a soldier to, get Chuck Norris riled up.
Yeah. In
general, just because it's probably it would have to be a very sore subject for somebody if your brother went off to this. Excuse me. If your brother went off to this war and died in some jungle.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's definitely his reaction to this is not necessarily one of, I hate these dirty hippies, and it's also not one of, these politicians are the cause of all these problems. It's very much a all you people have abandoned them.
And he's also not the Tom Berenger, psychotic sergeant character from Platoon that would come a few years later where he's just mowing down villagers and stuff like that. I mean, they go out of their way in this movie to like him talking with that one villager. We'll talk about that scene when it comes up, but they kind of go out of their way to show that, like, no, Chuck's a soldier and he's just fighting other soldiers, and this is, you know, a war and all this stuff. But I don't know. I think it's neat that there was such a backstory to this, but I think we've sent this down a much more serious tone. This feels like very NPR today for Film Strip, because this is a Golan Globus movie after all, which means there's mounds of cocaine involved. So they made 2 movies back to back. So that sounds like the economy of purpose that is Golan Globus and Cannon Films.
Today we're going to talk about the Chuck Norris magnum opus that is Missing in Action, produced in 1984 on a budget of $1.3 million. It is one of the enduring classics of the Chuck Norris genre, and is one of the main reasons why the Chuck Norris meme took off in the early 2000s.
Well done, sir. All things considered, Chuck Norris is brought to you by Wickles Pickles, or whatever. This is the first thing I could think of.
All things considered, Chuck Norris is brought to you by the Rand Corporation. The Rand Corporation. We caused Vietnam,
right? Exactly. Which is what's funny about it, man. But I look,
and also a grant from the Halliburton Group. Halliburton, we're just straight up Cobra.
I don't know that we can even go beyond that. That may be the best line of the show at this point. Wow. So, I guess I should just do a plot summary, then we can get into this thing. As Mission Impossible.
But are you
no, I
read
can't.
It in
I don't
your
really have an NPR voice. So I'm just gonna, but I am gonna cop to this. So I watched this movie and I'm sitting there going like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna do the plot summary of this. So I'm writing it down and I go, what's this movie really about? The military industrial complex. You know what is an offspring of that is we're all grappling with here in 2020s now? AI. So I asked ChatGPT and Bard Google to write this plot summary, and this is what it gave me.
That's
Army
very
Colonel
clever.
James Braddock, played by Chuck, of course, is still haunted by his experiences in the Vietnam War, where he's held prisoner for 7 years. And while he claims there are many other POWs still in the country, politicians and the Vietnamese government work to push the narrative that all were released. Braddock goes along with a senator and his staff to Ho Chi Minh City, formerly Saigon, to participate in an investigative committee about missing soldiers, and he recognizes a ruthless North Vietnamese officer who tortured him, then played by the venerable Ernie Ortega, and General Tran, played by James Hong, leads these talks where they claim Braddock was only held because he is a war criminal. Braddock uses his blonde ninja skills, I added that part, to confront the general that night and find out where the missing soldiers are, a camp just 8K or 5 miles for you Yankees from the coast. Braddock stabs the general when he pulls a gun and nearly escapes Vin and the soldiers looking for him. Braddock leaves the next morning and goes to Bangkok, where he connects with his old army buddy, Jack Tucker, played by M. Emmett Walsh, who is working as a smuggler, nightclub, Jerry Buss, something. And then he and Braddock acquire weapons and vehicles and prepare for an all-out assault and rescue mission on the camp, while Vin and his men stay in pursuit. Braddock actually fights with Vin and uses an axe to kill him. Braddock and Tuck infiltrate the POW camp, where Braddock leads a one-man assault, only to learn that the soldiers were moved earlier as the camp was tipped off by Vin and his men. Tuck and Braddock intercept the convoy and rescue 4 POWs. Tuck holds off an attacking patrol boat and sacrifices himself so Braddock and the prisoners of war can reach an escape helicopter, which destroys the boat. Braddock and his group arrive at the hearings just during final statements, where they expose the Vietnamese lies by bursting into the press room, and credits roll. And thank you so much for AI and a little bit of humorous interjection by me for that plot summary.
One night in Bangkok makes Chuck Norris humble.
We're just going to keep that bit up going all night now, I guess. I had forgotten something about this movie, though, Ron, that I made a note of it when I was watching it.
Did you forget?
Well, I did forget that, because I was like, M. Emmett Walsh, the venerable character actor M. Emmett Walsh, who's, probably I don't know if he's most known. A lot of people will remember his role in Blood Simple, the Coen Brothers movie, and he's excellent in that movie. But I don't know that I've ever seen the guy give a bad performance, even in a lousy movie. Like, he's just shown, and he's still like working to this day, so he's still with us. He's just an incredible performer.
And he's great.
He is awesome in this movie. We'll get to him, but the nearly 10 minutes, almost wordless battle flashback that is basically the live action G.I. Joe thing here, but except there's not lasers, there's actual bullets hitting people. And I had forgotten that this movie starts that way because I felt like it started much slower and quieter and then ramped up to that. And I felt like, all the battle stuff you're remembering is in part 2, because I'd seen that movie a lot, even as bad as it is. There's a lot of action to it. And no, this one opens up with like this action flashback, but it ends with Chuck throwing 2 pins off of hand grenades and jumping off of a hut into a I don't know, mosh pit of Vietnamese soldiers that he's going to take out with 2 grenades. And he wakes up with banquet beer and Spider-Man on the television.
Which is funny because Joseph Zito was a huge Spider-Man fan. And this was the time that Canon got the rights to do a Spider-Man movie that was supposed to be done by Joseph Zito. That's why Spider-Man is what Chuck Norris watches.
Yes.
In this movie, because
yes, well, you know what?
Synergy.
I'll tell you, that did put a smile on my face because I loved those cartoons as a kid, and Iceman and Firestar and all that. I loved all of them. She may have been one of my original redheaded crushes. I don't know, but it's hard to trace them all back. But probably Cherry Valance from Outsiders, maybe the original, because Diane Lane is the original of everything. But I remember waking up, look at this, and all I could think for myself was like, man, Braddock looks like he's good for somebody that only consumes like, high gravity beer. So like there's no light in the fridge. I'm like, man, I can't do that. I would have to run and work out more than I do if I tried to exist on the liquid only diet. Though after I say that to you, I remember now, Hulk Hogan talking about his steady diet before matches was like 6 Miller Lights, and then after was 2 Tylenol and 12, and that's what he existed on for about 20 years.
I think once you have the muscle mass of a Chuck Norris, calories are afraid to cling to your perfect sculpted abs. Well, let's be honest. He's not like super sculpted in this movie. What he looks like is a professional fighter, which is what he is. He walks into this movie, like he shows up in this movie with his shirt off several times. And I'm not like, oh, wow, that's a great physique. I'm like, that's a dude who can take a punch, laugh it off, and then you make a great point. It's something nobody really ever talks enough about professional fighters, especially the guys that fight in the higher weight classes of any combat sport. Their body mass has to be built to absorb so much damage. Like you look at a boxer and you look at a guy like Lennox Lewis and you think, man, that's a big, tall, fat guy. And no, it's not. He's made out of nothing but rock. Like you go hit one of the Klitschko's and then your hand will be in ER for weeks. Like they're made of stone. Or just if you want to hit a dude who's got a pot belly, go hit John Ruiz. Like he's the most unimpressive looking dude on this in boxing, but it is like there's something to be said for having that mass and that girth. And Chuck's not a big dude at all, but he's only like 5'9", 5'10", but he doesn't look sculpted, but he looks like somebody that is definitely in shape and could kick your ass 3 ways to Sunday. And what I love in this movie is that they don't shy away from, like, at no time does he ever like primp himself or anything. He's just flowing golden mane and facial the whole time. Like it's pretty cool. Yeah, he is. One of the things I appreciate most about this movie is that Chuck Norris is absolutely no frills. Like the character of Braddock wouldn't primp, wouldn't preen, wouldn't trim his chest hair or anything like that. So Chuck Norris just walks in looking like Chuck Norris. Like he's got the beard, he's got the shaggy golden mane, he's got chest hair. He's wearing all denim shirt. Like he's it's just straight. Like it's pretty much the same outfit from Invasion USA. It's just denim on denim. It's very John Mellenkampish of the day. Yeah, and the Little Pink House was probably the name of the torture chamber he was in sadly, Hanoi Hilton. So. But I mean, we see him, and he's not a beefcake or anything like you say, but he's definitely somebody who looks like he can handle himself. And I love that there's the whole inciting piece here is we've got this political envoy going over to
Vietnam to meet with the North Vietnamese, and they're really there as partial publicity stunt, but also because, again, the White House at that time, Congress, the American public, in some ways, were demanding some answers about what's going on, where we're going, and we got to have a face to go with it. So we got to go get Colonel Braddock, who, I mean, just to think about the idea of an Army colonel who had been a prisoner for 7 years and had gotten out, been released. However, they don't really ever tell you this. If you watch the second movie, you know how it goes down, but
They mentioned that he
I missed
escaped
that part.
2
So
years
thank you
ago.
for dropping that, because I thought it was just they were kind of hiding that to tease the second movie.
It's literally just a 1-note line. Like, it's literally just kind of thrown away in the middle of a scene as almost an unimportant.
But it really doesn't matter. But you've got to have, if we have this guy on as the face of it, then it can sell it so that we can continue to do whatever nefarious Rand Corporation shit that they were going to do anyway. So, I mean, that's what this is all about. Let's not kid ourselves. So, I mean, this is precursor to RoboCop and OmniCorp and all that, but that's been going on forever.
Well, Colonel Braddock, have you heard of a little thing called the
Neither have I.
Contras?
Anyway,
Mommy says they're
wait a
going to help
minute.
us fight the commies.
That was when Jupiter was in Mercury or something. But you gotta get,
Did you know that they put mercury in Gatorade?
that leaned it a little bit into Trump. I just want you to know that impression slipped just a little. So
all of my impressions, because they're all bad.
I don't think
but
they're
that's
bad.
part of the fun.
It's part of the charm. Anyway, they bring him over there to be the face of it, and I love how he's just so stone cold about it the whole time, and it's just like,
Before we go too far into what you're trying to say, Jay, I'm sorry I have to interrupt. One of the things that stuck out to this movie immediately was you never see Braddock in a uniform.
No,
he's never in a uniform.
Mm-hmm.
He's not in his dress uniform. He doesn't act like he's ashamed of his time in the military, but it's a time that has passed him. Aside from the only thing he's really got going on is he's going on TV to make appearances, to get people to talk about finding these missing soldiers. So he has left his military behind. Like, if this had been a Seagal movie, like a Seagal movie from 1992, we would have gotten a shot of him.
Yeah, he would have had on his full whites or whatever. So
with his incongruous long hair flowing in the breeze and his girdle straining to keep those butt heavies in place.
Yeah.
But no, there's no. The thing about Chuck Norris is you can argue that he's flat, right? You can argue that he doesn't have traditional charisma because he's not he's not a leading man type. He is an action movie dude. And at no point does he do anything to make himself look attractive. At no point does he do anything to make himself seem, smooth or funny or charismatic. He'll throw a wry quip out there now and then, and his comedy comes entirely from his deadpan face. And he gets.
Do you know who his modern day counterpart to me is? Jason Statham. This is Jason Statham. Jason Statham was an athlete. I mean, he was a college athlete. He's a diver. Go look that up sometime and just be impressed, by the way, because, oh my goodness. Now, he's sculpted to death, but he gets off on being the heavy, quiet, sort of slow burning, every now and then a quip dude in the room, even in the goofiest movies he's in. And in the best ones he's in, Crank, Transporter, so yeah. So,
also Crank too, yeah.
Some of those things that he's in, it works because he's that slow burn. And I think that you're right to call that out. Chuck Norris does not have Arnold's charisma. Arnold's not an actor, but he's got charisma for a million years. And he doesn't have Stallone's sort of chutzpah and his whole thing, but he works because you just feel like underneath the surface, there's like this powder keg ready to go, and when it does, it's not that it's going to be loud and boisterous. It's going to be so quick and so violent. I mean, when we get to see him finally kill somebody here, I mean, it's exactly what you think it is. I mean, I wrote in my notes that Chuck Norris becomes the white ninja or the blonde ninja or something, and basically avoids. He makes all more manner of noise, and no one hears him because he just is a complete silent thing. But I love that in this movie that they let him use what he was good at. He could do all of that stuff. And let's put him in situations where he doesn't have to talk a lot, because we don't need him to talk. His feet will do the talking.
In every scene he's in, and I don't know if this is just how he carries himself, or if this was a deliberate choice he made, or what. He moves like a cobra. You ever watch like nature footage of a cobra? Very
deliberate. Yeah.
And they move very deliberate. They move slower than you think they are until it's time to move fast. And when they move fast, it's quick, it's devastating. There's no 18, 15 punches getting thrown. He'll grab a guy by the mouth, drag him into the bushes, and break his neck. Or he'll grab a guy, throw him to the ground, and pulverize his head with a hammer fist. Like, it's the ultimate action movie economy of motion. Like, the things Chuck does, he does them because it's the time to do these things. At no point does it feel like, you know, when Van Damme does the splits or something, and it's like, hey, look, it's time to show off the thing I can do. It's all like, Braddock is going to grab this guy and kill him as quietly as possible.
You can see why Bruce Lee took to this guy, you know, in a lot of ways. But you could see like, oh yeah, this guy understands the economy of movement. And in a lot of ways, martial artists, I mean, the best of them are about that. It's not about swinging wild, you know, it's about, I need 3 inches and as much speed as I can get behind it in a small amount of torque to do the damage I do. And I think you're right. Call it a cobra. You know, cobra looks like this big kind of lumbering snake until it doesn't want to. And all it takes is one bite. Cause why do 10 when you could just do 1, you know, and it's very, very toxic. But I love how he's still slow burning, like through the movie. I mean, we meet like, you know, he's got the senator's press secretary or whatever that the soap opera actress was from, and that guy who's just the typical congressional weasel, you know, there. And you like the first thing they do when they get him off the plane is, of course, he's going to meet one of his mortal enemies, General Vin. And I texted you, I was like, well, it's clearly not Vietnam. And you're like, no, why do that when the Philippines will do it? I'm like, yeah. And why hire real Asians when you can just get Latinos? That was before I saw James Hong show up. But I was like, yeah, Ernie Ortega plays like multiple dimensions of things here. It was the 80s. I'm not offended by it. I did think it was neat to see him though, because I've seen him as a heavy in so many things, you know, and it's like, oh yeah. I was like, oh yeah, you know, this guy is just like a bastard just the second you look at him. And I love that they haven't seen each other in presumably at least 7 years, maybe longer, right? And you see that he's the one that like cut Chuck across the chest with the knife when he was torturing him in the camp and stuff like that. And, you know, they had him hung up in the, you know, mock crucifixion and all that stuff. And I mean, you know, oh yeah, we know that guy's going to die and die real hard.
Oh yeah, and you know he's the dangerous guy,
right?
He's one of the
which
dudes
is weird because I thought ultimately this would lead up to James Hong will be the big boss that we have to get to eventually, and this is the little boss. But they flipped that completely the way around, and neither of these guys are the boss. The boss is the camp, as it were, and James Hong goes out pretty quick. But yeah, Vin here is so. Again, just so sinister, and just the way these guys are glaring at each other. I'm loving it, man, because it's just so much fun. I mean, it is not good thespian work. I'm not going to tell you it was, but for what this movie's asking them to do, they're pulling it off. They're making it work.
I mean, say what you want to about the thespian work of the non-James Hong people in this, but James Hong understands his assignment to be a little weaselly career officer, diplomat, pencil pusher type.
Oh no, he is totally
exactly the vibe Senator that I'm getting
Porter,
off.
David Tress's counterpart. Like they are the same person. He's wearing the military uniform because that's the culture and how you would get into that level of power there. But they're the same person. You're exactly right. They are the pencil pushing weaselly bureaucrats of their own system and society, you know, and they've got their own people to utilize along the way. You know, Vin here will get Tuck later. And, you know, Ann Fitzgerald, I mentioned Leonor Castro is just kind of there for, eye candy, among other things. She has like, she just leaves the movie and like, 10 minutes into it. I didn't remember this until I looked her up though on IMDb. I forgot this was Johnny Rico's mom from Starship Troopers. So I was like, oh, now I know that face. Yeah. Right.
Wow. I would.
Well, she was on Guiding
Light,
like
to know
so
more.
I can tell you that. I knew she was on a soap opera. I couldn't remember which one, but she's looked like, she said that look like you were on a Moonlighting or a Dynasty or something. But 100%.
Yeah, that Harrison did give away that she did some.
But I love this whole political plan and
ABC
getting
or
him
something.
there and all that. And I love this whole opening presser, but they bring in those like poor beaten down Vietnamese farmers, that are just emaciated in a lot of ways. And I love that they give Norris that quiet moment to walk up and the guy starts talking Vietnamese to him and he speaks back to him and he's basically saying like, look, this is we're just doing this because they told us we had to. He's like, yeah, I know, I understand. Like, and I think that is in there for a purpose though, because that scene doesn't have any other purpose unless it's this, is to show us this is not an angry American going back to just whack all these foreign people. All right. That's not what this is about. And this is not one of these people that you've heard about who killed civilians. That was not who Braddock was. He's being called a war criminal, but he's not one. He fought soldiers and, he obviously had relations, good relations with the Vietnamese. And I think that's why that's in here. And I'll applaud this movie for having that in here because it's a ballsy choice, one, in particular for the time and even for modern audiences, and two, for giving us that side of this character who could just be a caricature.
Yeah, I thought that was a one of the more interesting sort of political moments of the thing. Is like, they're parading us. The Vietnamese guys basically like, we're being paraded around here by our government, and Chuck Norris is there because he's being paraded around by his government as some sort of show of, unity or what have you. They're both there to be tools. It's just that Chuck Norris has no ulterior motive, and these poor, people that they dragged in off the street, or what felt like to me was they were dragging these people in from a re-education camp. And this was a condition of them getting allowed out of the re-education camp and back into normal society. Is like, here you go, do your dance, do your tap dancing. Just like we see those guys later who were South Vietnamese Black Panther Rangers when we get to the camp, that were also there because they were totally. They just were on the wrong side of the war.
Again, this movie is smart to add that in because after this is when we're going to start getting into the action, because we realize that Chuck Norris is like, okay, fine, I'll do your dog and pony show, but I'm clearly here on my own mission. And I know this guy knows what I'm talking about. He's talking about Tran. So I love when he goes over to Anne's hotel room or suite or whatever, and he just starts stripping in front of her. And she's like, look, I wanted you to come up for a drink because I'm trying to get you to relax. It was this little slow cowboy. And he's like, what? Oh, no, I'm not trying to come on to you. But I love that the eye candy of the movie. Later there's a scene we'll talk about with her, but like usually that's the other way around. And in this one, I'm like, no, it's going to be Chuck Norris doing the striptease. I thought that was kind of funny because he's got to put on his Black Ninja outfit, of course, so that he can sneak around in the night.
It's a really fun inversion of the expected trope, and it's kind of. It feels like to me, Joseph Zito is basically acknowledging Chuck Norris's all business persona. Like, he's not here to mess around with this lady. He's not here to, Dynasty. He's here on a mission they don't know about, and she's just she's as convenient a cover for him as the senator or his Black Ninja gear, or his trip to Bangkok. Like, she's there to serve a purpose for him. He's thinking on his feet. He's realizing, oh, if I go here and bring this bottle of champagne, I can crawl out her window and the guards will think I'm in here having fun.
Exactly. And let's jump ahead real quick and we can come back to his prowling or whatever. But when he comes back after the whole showdown with the general and everything, and he's trying to get back in the room, of course, she's startled by this or whatever. And he has this scene that, I'm not gonna lie, I mean, I feel weird about it, but I also get it in the way it plays off. You can tell that they already had a shorthand worked out. He like rips down one half of her night. He throws her in bed and acts like, he didn't even have time to tell her, like, act like you're making out with me. Like, they just going for it. And she's like, starts slapping him. And then here come all the guys with guns. And immediately she goes into mode. And I'm like, it's almost like they had a conversation that's not filmed, where he tells her, like, if I run in this room real quick, please cover me for this. Because of course she would be in, hot grass too, if anything went down. So, she's got to cover her own self as the senator's envoy. But I like the fact though, that she's not just the damsel in distress and the eye candy of this. Like, she's a willing participant playing along. And then she does give him a little bit of the tip before he goes to Bangkok about what to do.
And it feels like weirdly, it felt like she had some kind of training. I feel my whole thought was thinking secretly, especially after she tips him off later about going to Bangkok. I feel like, could she be like a CIA plant here to kind of nudge this weapon in the right direction to get him to do the task that we want him to do without tipping him off or tipping off the Vietnamese? I don't know. This gives us our plausible deniability.
I'm going to tell you my theory. This is totally from my own head and pop culture and also somewhat conspiracy theory stuff. Is she's a Red Sparrow. She's a Rusky. But she is intelligence. I think we're both over that. She's got intelligence background, but she's here working that side because. You know what's really good about a Cold War is when you don't actually shoot each other, because you can exert a lot more control and build that complex. And we allegedly outspent them. All that stuff. They had some other problems going on in Russia and still do to this day. But I took it like when I was just thinking like, okay, what's this woman's backstory? Because she disappears after the next morning. We never hear from her again. And I'm like, okay. Yeah, she's a plant for somebody. And, she probably, it being 1984, she probably would have been classed as CIA. But nowadays, if they remade this somehow or whatever, I'm like, nah, she's Red Sparrow. She's totally on the other side. Yeah, she's Carrie Russell.
She would definitely be a Russian agent if they remake this.
That's
movie.
Who she is. So.
And I like that thought because it would, in the 80s is when China and Russia started. Well, the 70s is when China and Russia started to have their falling out between one another. And they started to move against one another more openly, particularly regarding their various border disputes back and forth. So that would be a very clever way to kind of throw a wrench into the Vietnamese-Chinese partnership because even today, we depend a lot on China to keep Vietnam and North Korea in relative line. I mean, Vietnam has become a fairly stable country at this point, but particularly North Korea. But
and not to digress too far, but it's like you and the guys talked about on the Red Dawn review. You didn't review the newest one, but you talked about it a little bit in that show. And I remember John Milius, who's a legitimate wild man, but saying like that remake was fine, except the premise was totally stupid. It made no political sense. Why would we go to war with China? We trade with them. We make money with each other. We're not going to do that. It doesn't make any sense. He said he would have done it with like Mexico or something, but he said there's no like advantageous reason for them to ever be totally militarily adverse with us because it cuts to their bottom line too.
Which is the cutting of the bottom line is why they edited it to become North Korea.
Yeah, so that movie was sloppy and poor anyway. Before they cut
very poorly, I might add.
Yeah, so.
Having
you did that too.
Screen,
me and you both are survivors of Red Dawn in a theater. Yeah, true. Yeah, so
I had to because Den of Geek asked me to.
I did. At the time, to go all the way back, we were going to do a twofer with I think me and Nick or me and Brian were going, and I saw it and I just said no. I was like, nah, we're not doing it. I said I can't review this. It's so bad. And I said, and I don't want to talk about the other one in light of this. So years later, you came around and did that one, thankfully. But no, I think that's what's going on. But to back up now to the ninja mission, the blonde ninja on the loose, I call it. I love that we get this and that the movie takes time to let all this happen because it's so well shot too. I got got to give Joseph Zito a lot of credit. There's tons of those like standard shots where somebody like turns left and then they turn back right, and all of a sudden the thing they wanted to see goes right by them. You know, it's just that old trope, and they pay no attention to the following power lines and all this other crap going on. I thought it was great, and when he sneaks into James Hong's bedroom and he's got that knife up to his throat, man, that was good. I had a good time with that.
That is slasher bona fides right there. That is 100%, and that is one of the more scary Chuck Norris shots. Just him coming out of the darkness like that, and that knife. It's beautifully done, and you know he's kind of a workman-like director. He's done a lot of stuff, and he's been involved in a lot of projects. But you know, there's a reason dudes like this can come in and give you an on-time, under-budget action movie. And you know, there's a lot to be said for the choices that are made, be they made for economical reasons or stylistic reasons. But that and that whole interaction between the two of them in the bedroom just works perfectly to me, and that's a great use of little Weasley.
Oh, it is, but I'll tell you what I loved about it, and what I thought I was going to get was like, okay, this is Bond villain time. Hong's going to be like pissed about this, and then he'll come back in the end, and they'll have a showdown or whatever. Because I had totally forgotten this movie and haven't seen it when I was a kid. Because spoiler alert, I've seen part 2 way more than I've seen this one for reasons I'll never be able to explain. But that reason is Showtime and a VHS player.
That reason is
but anyway,
Showtime.
I thought he would come back, and the fact that he pulls a gun on Chuck, and Chuck, of course, you know, throws that knife like right through him. It's great squib work, man. Just blood all over the white sheets. I was like, oh man, we killed like the big bad in the first 40 minutes of this movie. What's going on? I did not see that coming at all.
Yeah, that was. I don't know if James Hong just had a heart out to go do another project or what, but that was yeah. You're right. They set him up to be the big bad villain because he's the smiling face that meets Chuck Norris at the airport, right? And he's clearly some sort of mover and shaker in Vietnamese politics. But then no, he gets a knife like through the chest, and they don't do blood
because CGI now blood does not look
as well as they did blood in the 80s.
It doesn't. It never will. Except no substitutes for Karo syrup and some food coloring. So I think it just looks good, and then it puts him on the run. He's got to outrun the authorities to get back to his hotel suite, and he's got to sneak into this heavily guarded place. And the fact that he pulls that off it's pretty heart stopping and amazing. For an action scene that has not a lot of action to it, it works as a good chase.
It's a good it's a lot of good skulking. I appreciate somebody that can move stealthy, and I appreciate the fact that they're like, he's not going to be able to just Stallone style shoot his way out of this, because there's no way one dude can outshoot, you know, a battalion of the Vietnamese army, because
which is funny because that,
just keep throwing dudes at him until he gets too tired to kill
that they
them.
abandoned in the back half of the movie. True. Yeah.
But that at least makes sense because he's got the element of surprise, right? And he you know, arms the Black Panther Rangers, and he arms the dudes that are there with him, and of course he's got a the
M60 is what it is. Yeah,
M372.
It's the
he's got that machine gun
out of the water.
The
iconic scene from this movie, as it were, and maybe of Chuck Norris's career, which is saying something. But this does lead us though to one of my favorite parts of this whole movie, where we introduce Tuck, Emmett Walsh, when he comes into this thing as this, again, I called him this Jerry Buss-esque ex-vet, you know, gun runner dude or whatever. I love this man. He just eats the scenery up, and you believe every word he says, and he's such a chameleon as an actor. I just love a good character actor like this.
So Emmett Walsh comes into this movie, and I pause it, and I look at my wife, and I say, I missed my calling. I should have been a greasy sleazy character actor guy in a Hawaiian shirt in action movies. Like, I should have been like the M. Emmett Walsh of the 2000s.
I feel like this is a little bit of a riff off of Magnum P.I.'s friend.
Should definitely do that.
Who was not Higgins, but the other one. From the Selleck show, I really feel like they're kind of playing with that a little with here. But you've got to have a sidekick. Like every buddy movie has to have the sidekick. And what I love about this guy is that, again, I mean, he's just a Lothario completely, but he is connected. And he's got his stuff together, and when they have their little fight, and they screw around, it's just it's neat to see movies where there are two characters that clearly have a shorthand, and they're never going to explain all of it to you. And I actually appreciate that. Nowadays, I think they spend too much time telling you all of it, and trying to show you all of it in multiple flashbacks and stuff. When you just get people that can chemistry wise pull off the dialogue, and it works. And I mean, again, that's a happy accident here, because Golden Globus either has $1.5 million, $3 million funding this movie. They don't know. And so Joseph Zito's just shooting what he's got. But these two guys are really elevating this. And I give a lot of that credit to Walsh, who's, again, just such an incredible performer.
And he knows how to bounce off of that Chuck Norris energy. He knows how his reactions to the things Chuck Norris says retroactively make those lines funny, rather than what they could have been, which was terrifying. Because Chuck Norris says,
"Yeah, right.
Give me we're going to do this for $3,000, or I'm going to shoot you." That's terrifying. But when M. Emmett Walsh is responding to that, and clearly comfortable enough to kind of needle back at him while still acknowledging the genetic superiority that is Chuck Norris, it makes those scenes really pop. And you're right. If they do a remake of this, we're going to get a long backstory about how Tuck was running guns for the CIA, or Tuck is a CIA operative, or whatever. More CIA stuff. Yeah, he's 100% coded as well, he's already established as running, like, what was he running, cigarettes in Vietnam?
So let's just tie it all
running
together.
heroin
around the same time.
Vietnam
he
into
is
Southeast Asia.
General McAllister and Mr. Joshua's supplier for Lethal Weapon.
Oh yeah, he is definitely funneling.
Now I want Shane Black.
He's definitely funneling stuff or involved in the funneling of.
I don't want him to direct
100%.
it. I just want him to write the script. So I feel like that would make this perfect. Again, I think we just need to get.
I'll allow him
it.
to direct it, but only if he has a really good producer.
You need the guy that they had do that RoboCop remake that did those incredible Brazilian cop movies. Gosh, I'm forgetting. It's Jose Padilla or whatever his name is. But Jose.
I think it's Jose Padilla. But he would make a.
I love that guy's stuff. And when I saw that RoboCop remake as a sidebar, I thought, this is good. I don't know why people hate it. And I went and looked up his other work, and I was like, holy smokes, this guy's amazing. It's. I think people.
If that movie wasn't called RoboCop, it would have been more successful.
Just the remake of the Verhoeven, and wisely, this guy was like, "No, that's a bad idea. We're going to do something different." And then you got Gary Oldman and Michael Keaton to just chew scenery for an hour and a half, which is great. Elite Squad were the movies I was trying to think of. If you haven't seen the Elite Squad flicks, I highly recommend them. They're very, very, very good. But
100%.
Oh,
but,
all day. Yeah.
And those two, and Jackie Earle Haley is like the sleazy weapons guy. Who is 100% just like a murder salesman, which is just the most phenomenal way to take a character like that.
But that's what I love about this, when they're doing the arm up thing, and they're going to buy like the impenetrable raft from hell or whatever. Like, it looks like it's painted like Grease Lightning and shit. But everybody in this movie is except Chuck is cigarettes and sweat. And I'm like, it's like, we're just gonna. Well, it was probably humid as hell wherever they were shooting this in the Philippines, so that's real sweat. Okay, all right. Well,
No,
I was either that, or I thought they just took him to Florida.
They shot some of the Bangkok stuff in Bangkok.
Also work. It's true, even in the 80s.
Possibly
but
the only
everybody, and I love that negotiation where he's like, and what I wanted to ask you is like, whose money are we spending here? Because I don't think Chuck like brought his wallet. Even I guess it's all Tuck's gun running dough that he's got hung around and he owes him or something. But
I feel like if he owed him, that would have been established. I feel like,
to be fair, Army colonels do make a good bit of dough, even back in the 70s. And if he had 7 years of combat training and as a prisoner of war, they would have paid that man his money.
And he has 7 years of 7 years of extra
right,
combat
and being
duty
a colonel,
on top
so he had
of
done at least 20,
probably
25,
10 years
35
he already
years
spent
of
in
service
Vietnam.
at this point. So yeah, he's got the money. Maybe he's got the money. It doesn't matter. That's what I love about it. Is it's just like James Bond. It doesn't matter. So whatever. Yeah, well, that's just true. He's very minimalist. He's living in basically like Scarface's apartment.
Once he's spending the money
for the early part of that movie, and that's where he's hanging out.
All he had to do was his big expense is what, getting Bandit to bring.
Yeah, you noticed that too. He's definitely he's living in. Like, I don't think that's California. He's supposed to be. I'm like, Coors Light in a fridge in the 1980s. I don't think you could do that. Banquet. Okay, fair. Yeah, it was Banquet. Yes.
Coors Banquet beer.
Put the tweet down.
Stop! Don't tweet, please, guys. It's cool.
Yeah.
Yes. That is definitely not California.
No, I feel like
that
Florida.
Definitely not Arizona or
northern Florida,
deserty
Panhandle.
Place. That is 100% Florida. Chuck Norris is like, Chuck Norris is like where my mom is moving. Chuck Norris is 100% Panhandle, Florida guy. Like,
right. I mean, I feel
there's not alligators he can be friends with. He's not going to live there. And that's 100% the vibe you get off of Braddock, especially since you've got the military.
You feel like Braddock probably ran across
the military
Jack
bases
Colton,
on the Gold Coast
Michael
there.
Douglas's character from Romancing the Stone and Jewel of the Nile somewhere along the way. Tuck had somewhere. Like they all feel like they run in the same circle somewhere. So, which Loki, by the way, a very underrated Michael Douglas performance. By the way, people don't remember that movie, but it's pretty good. So.
Tuck 100% knows him, and Tuck 100%
very angry.
has run afoul of Indiana Jones by this point.
Well, in the 80s?
Probably not
alive,
Indiana Jones.
So.
I'm not sure how old that character would be.
He was doing things. That's all we know. So, but I mean,
that's true. Yeah,
I love these characters though, that they're so deep in themselves, but they're also so blank that we can just put all this on them too. That's what makes this movie fun, is because you can just insert and fill in the blanks as you want, and it's a blast. It's like the Contra game come to life, for a kid my age. Oh, no doubt. We're going to get to that because after we load up, right, we're going to go and make this assault of the camp. And all I could think was like, well, they clearly didn't have enough, thermite and C4 to really blow anything up. So it's just a lot of sparklers, a lot of sparks going on, and eat your heart out 4th of July. I mean, I loved it. I thought if you're going to have an assault on the camp, it needs to be what that dream he had in the beginning. It needs to be that come true, right? And they more or less replay that. And I thought it was incredible. That was a great action set piece.
The whole thing makes me think of the action set piece from Tropic Thunder.
Yes.
Where Danny McBride is like orchestrally conducting
now in
all
our
these
remake, Danny
explosions
McBride's got to be in this somewhere
chunks
too.
Of the jungle. That's exactly what I thought of.
Yeah, Danny McBride is stuck. You're right. Yeah, Danny McBride's stuck. So
I mean, Danny McBride's tucked.
No, that would be perfect.
Really?
That's a great callback, and I'm not sure of it, but I would bet that Tropic Thunder was winking and nodding to this in a lot of ways. So, but I love
100%, 100%, because you get a shot of Ben Stiller doing the coming out of the water pose. So that's 100%.
I know. I hadn't thought of it either until we're
funny
just
that
sitting
it
here having
took
this
me this
conversation.
long
But it's a heck of an assault
together.
and an action scene. And Chuck realizes something's wrong. Where the hell is everybody? You know, and of course they got tipped off. You know, I mean, yeah, that has to be the thing. We didn't even talk about that Ben and his men are tailing him, and the way he kills him with he grabs the axe with no handle on it and just shoves it through him. I mean, that was a hell of a death. But I mean, he gets to like the inventive kills in this rival any Jason movie. I feel like Joseph Zito like walked off that set, walked to this one, and was like, "Oh, I know how to do this. Trust me."
Yeah, he 100% had a notebook, and it's like, well, you did this one, we did this one. Oh, we didn't get to this one, and we didn't get to this one. I've got some ideas. You ever seen somebody have an axe head rammed through their torso?
But I'm sure Ernie Ortega was like, that's fake, right?
And Chuck Norris is like,
he was doing the Macho Man to Jake thing, like I want to see the snake bite you first. So, and then we're gonna know. But no, I love it though. I love that he does this whole like again assault on the camp, realizes that something's up. They're going on the convoy. And so they take off, and man, I love how they intercept this convoy with that boat gets its action scene. It's like the boat's like, "Hey, I'm here too. Let me get in this thing." I don't know why the boat's Columbo all of a sudden, but the boat wanted to get in on the action too. And the only thing I've seen close to this since is from the John Rambo or just Rambo movie, the fourth one, where just that 25 minutes of just pure carnage that Rambo goes on is the same kind of thing, just without any of the effects of the squibs and all that was CGI to be honest, but which is probably the best that's ever looked. But this is incredible. I love how they take out this whole convoy. Chuck comes up out of the water with that gun and blowing these guys away. It's what you want in this movie, right? It's that blood fist pumping moment, right?
Yeah, 100%. And this movie does deliver on that. That is a great sequence with the camp, and it's staged and shot really well. I think whoever was responsible for the choreography of this scene did a bang up job. It's one of those deals where you could tell that they knew, okay, we can do this once. We are going to work until we can get it right, because your time is the cheapest thing we can do. Like your time costs way less than explosives, even in the Philippines. So we are going to figure out how to do this, and we are going to get it right, and we're going to do it in one take, and we're going to make it happen. So,
I feel like it's perfectly choreographed because it doesn't feel like it's choreographed. So clearly they ran them through it, like you say, multiple times. There's several times when that kind of thing happens in this movie where Chuck's dragging a guy and he throws him in the water just as he jumps on the boat. And it's very James Bond-esque. Like I feel like, especially like the John Glenn Bonds, and he spans a couple of eras of Bonds. They feel like a lot of that same kind of action beat stuff. And I love that stuff. I mean, I grew up on it. So it's just in my brain. And I'm seeing this and I'm going like, yeah, it's the same. It's the same kind of idea. But I loved, of course, that the backup plan, of course, we've got a helicopter. We got to get these guys too. And I knew he had to go down, but I feel like if this movie's made today, Tuck would somehow survive. But on one hand, I love that he goes down swinging and he has to shoot the patrol boat with his gun before he gets killed. But I also hate that Tuck had to die for everybody because it sucks because I love that character.
Yeah, it's really disappointing that Tuck had to die, but I feel like that's pretty much the default choice you make with a character like that. He's got to die doing the right thing, because we've established that he is not quite the mercenary that he tries to tell himself to be. He's still got a little bit of red-blooded America in there, even though he's
he's a total capitalist. He's as red-blooded American as anybody in the movie.
Lawless Southeast Asia. He still has to do the right thing at the end. Yeah,
right.
there really
that man's
is
gonna
nothing more
get his money out of that.
no-
But I love
more
how
American
that
than-
works,
than
and that
being
they,
a,
they blow the
bloodthirsty
patrol boat
capitalist,
up.
like,
It's a
doing
great
anything
line.
for
I don't
that
know who the helicopter
$10,000.
pilot was. And Chuck tells him where he's going. He's like, "Oh shit." It's just like, oh no, I know what this is going to end like. And I mean, it's great though, but it's a perfect. I mean, it's a perfect Magnum PI ending too, where they burst into the press conferences. This guy's spewing his last lies, and boom, I got POWs on my arm, and it's almost like Chuck just puts his thumbs up, and then that freeze frame, and that's it. And I was like, wow, we ran out of money in film. We had one shot to get that done, and they got it done in like 20 days.
Yep. I feel like that's not necessarily an issue where they ran out of money in film. I feel like that is the happy ending you're supposed to get out of a self-contained.
Well, let me rephrase that then. It's not so much that
this was
the wrong
originally
thing to do.
envisioned.
It's exactly the right thing to do. It just feels like I think today they would over-explain it and let it go on longer. Whereas this movie knows, boom, through the door, point made, we're done. And I appreciate the economy of the movement. To circle back to what we were talking about earlier.
And it feels like a very Chuck Norris point. Chuck wanted a happy ending where the POWs get rescued and the soldiers at least are vindicated. So he definitely got what he wanted, and I think the movie's better for it because I think that's how you got to end a movie like this. And the fact that it just comes, they burst in, you get that big moment. You don't need to see like where this goes. You don't need to see how this shakes out. You don't need to see the way the Vietnamese double back or the government worms their way out of this. You don't need to see it. You don't want to see it. You want to see those guys coming in. The fallout's going to be the fallout. Who cares? The important thing is Chuck walks in the door.
Yeah, exactly. To compare it to First Blood Part 2, that would be a couple of years later.
POWs
it's a much more
there.
dour ending.
Here's 15 of them.
When Rambo and Troutman have that sort of shouting match on the tarmac after he gets back, and he, tells him it's not enough. It'll never be enough. He kind of walks off into the nothingness after that. That's a much sadder tale of it. Whereas this one's more like, we got him, and like I say, the happy ending is what they go for because I don't think Golden Globus does subtlety. I mean, I don't think it's in their mission statement at all. And this movie doesn't. It's got moments where it does that, but this ending is not one of them, and it shouldn't be either. I'm going to say that that's a right move.
It very much feels like the taking a page. If you had told me this movie had been done by Dino De Laurentiis, it would make perfect sense because this is very much the when my monkey die, everyone cry sort of philosophy of we are not going to strike like a Chuck Norris. We're not going to have pinpoint striking. We're not going to have economy of motion. When it's time to hit you, we are going to club you over the head with the biggest club we can find, and you will get the message that this is the happy ending. And it doesn't matter what happens to Braddock. It doesn't matter what happens to the POWs. It doesn't matter if none of them get to leave Vietnam ever again.
Yeah, so that's exactly what it is. This is the men that were sent off to do this
and
thing.
A government weasel
finally get the freeze frame of truth.
The government weasels from two different countries are put in their place.
And that's the whole point. And I think, and an interesting way, it almost makes this a protest movie in some ways because of that. It's like, F you, because these guys are real, and damn it, acknowledge it and move on because, and realize that instead of, shoving it under some damn press conference. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nothing is gonna improve until both sides acknowledge that this is what has been happening. And as much as both governments want to say, okay, well, that's all in the past, it's clearly not in the past for some people. It was clearly wasn't in the past for these POWs or for James Hong or anyone involved in these torture camps. So, it's you want to look the other way.
Yeah, exactly. And it's time for us to admit what our final thoughts, recommendations, and popcorn ratings
America
are
is going
for
to
this
confront
movie.
the
So,
fact
Ron,
that
what are
this is
yours for
happening, and
Missing in
Vietnam is
Action?
going to be forced to admit that this is happening. It's funny. I'm not the biggest fan of the cinematic works of Charles W. Chuck Norris. That's a joke for my wife. But I think this is one of the better uses of him as a performer. So I'm going to go with a large popcorn. This movie is a lot better than I remember it was. It has some very iconic moments. When it's time to blow up huts, they blow up huts real good. Everybody likes that. It's a simple story, but it's told well. It's great use of Norris. It's great use of Emmett Walsh. It's great use of James Hong. They get a lot of mileage out of the people that they have, and they get a lot of mileage out of the story idea that they've got.
Yeah, you know what? 100% agree on that. It's way better than you remember it being, and it's way better because the performances in it are a whole lot better than
yeah, I'm going to go large popcorn. This movie is way better
I'm not
than
talking necessarily about
remember
Chuck.
it being.
I'm talking about everybody they surround him with. This is a genius level of casting. Perfect weasels in David Tress and James Hong. Perfect evil mean mugger in Ernie Ortega, and perfect sidekick in Emmett Walsh. Like you can't beat that combo. And the movie again, it's well done because Joseph Zito knows how to do low budget, on point stuff and knows how to get the right buzz out of the audience at the right moment. So just like his Friday the 13th, this is one that definitely still holds up and stands up and is worth a watch and worth a revisit if it's been a while for you, or worth a first visit if this is your first time to it. So I'm with you, large popcorn on Missing in Action, and a lot of fun. And I would say, you compare Missing in Action and Invasion USA and have a pretty good double feature. I don't know that I could ever possibly recommend Missing in Action 2. And that movie is horrendously awful on so many levels. One, it's poorly made. It's terrible. And two, it's just dumb. I've only seen part of Missing in Action 3, and I fell asleep on the couch trying to get through it. So I don't know. I don't have much of a say on that one. But as far as the series goes, I don't think there is much of one. But this one movie, yeah, totally works.
Yeah, I definitely think this works too, and it's definitely worth your time. And you will be surprised. It's not about what you can bring to this movie that improves it, and you will be surprised by the connections that you make in this movie. And it's not necessarily because it's just bare bones stupidity. It's because they actually leave things unexplained.
And again, that's why I think we've laid in a lot of stuff on it because it's such
in the direction where you can kind of put these things together.
It allows you to
and
create your own adventure out of it.
Way more clever than it has any right.
Basically, we got the writer on it. We've put in a couple actors. Who do you want to play Braddock in the remake that we're going to do? We got the director and the writer and the comic relief and Danny McBride. But who do you want to play the new Chuck in our fantasy Missing in Action? Because I'm sitting here trying to think of modern people. Like, who would I stick in this role that could pull this off? And I don't know. Like, I really don't.
Ooh.
Yeah. I was trying to think ex-athlete. Yeah.
I think that you would almost have to go with somebody like, if he's still in shape, Rampage Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
Because he played, he was good in the B.A. Baracus role, in that he was pretty good in that. Like, he's not great. He's not a great actor, but he's a very good physical presence. I really think that somebody like Marshawn Lynch, who's in the second season or the third season of Westworld, he plays just a big mercenary for hire heavy guy, but he's got a
I have
little
to say
bit.
too, somewhere in this cast, he can be good, he can be bad, he can be in between. I don't care. I need Walton Goggins to make
for a
an
while.
appearance.
He could probably
I need
put in
Walton
a
Goggins
good.
in this
He could
role.
probably do this role
Somewhere.
really well.
No, well, I thought that was Danny McBride. Danny McBride was going to be Tuck. So I guess it depends on the age of the Braddock that we get. But
Well, who do you think's going
if
to
you
play
want
Tuck?
sleazy
I mean, come on.
politician, man, that could be a lot of
that's a
people
good
right
point.
now. They could pull that off, but. He could do. He's a little on the older side at this point. Like I kind of feel like you need somebody even that could.
My default
Jason
sleazy
Clark.
Politician is going to be like William
Jason
Sadler.
Clark could be your sleazy politician all
That's
day.
a little too.
Yeah. So we got. I think we've just fantasy booked this entire movie. So make this happen. Cannon, come back.
Oh,
Or maybe Mar
that's
Vista.
a good one. That's a good one right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Golden Globe is. Mar Vista. Yeah, Golden Globe is 2.
I mean, I think we just call our
who do you get
Pan
to be,
Asian Pan Asian American friends.
What wrong
Hawaii and
ethnicity
Samoa.
do you get to be?
Basically,
your
we
Vietnamese
just get the
people this
bloodline
time.
from WWE. We just get those guys, and they can. Roman can be that. I think either of the Uso brothers would be pretty hella heavies. Those guys are pretty mean. So I can
Roman
go
Reigns
with
is
that.
Roman Reigns is looking for a movie role. He can do it.
See, I don't know that we have one of those anymore. Dang.
I think that would be a good choice.
I don't know who that would be. I really don't.
But who do you get to be James Hong?
It would have to be a period piece. You'd have to set this in the period. It'd be in the
Don't
80s.
get those
There's no way you
guys
can shoot
anymore,
this
no.
in modern day, obviously, because the time wouldn't work.
I feel like since we're I feel like if you're
what?
doing this,
I think
and
he
you're
could do
going
it.
with just whatever
Yeah, it's not a
Pan
bad
Pacific
move.
actor we can find. I think a good choice. He's a little young for it. Would be Stephen Yeun.
Mm-hmm.
He's the guy who looks the most like the sleazy faux military diplomat guy.
I
got the
kind of
good
want
hair.
Rick Yoon to be.
He looks like the kind of dude that if your government was going to
I
put
feel
you
like
in
he
front
could
of a
pull that
bunch of
off.
cameras, that these days that would be the person they would choose.
I thought it was Rick. So, no, okay, I'm wrong. No, I'm talking about the
Steven
bad guy
Yeun.
from Die Another Day.
Let's get his name right.
Yeah, Rick Yoon.
No.
Yeah, there are two. So,
Glenn from The Walking Dead. No, it's Steven.
but you know what? That would also work. Yeah. So.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
I was thinking about.
Yeah,
I was thinking.
right.
Yeah, I was thinking
See,
about
and
Glenn
where
from
Rick
The Walking
Yoon
Dead,
is
who's done a
pretty
lot of
much.
great,
I mean, he was also the bad guy in the Fast and the
interesting.
Furious.
He's done a lot of great,
I mean,
interesting
he's-
action /
he's
horror
been
movies when
a
he's
good
not doing real movies that went
Asian
off.
stereotype heavy for many different things. So, yeah. So, well, you know what? Yeah, I think the James Hong role you could if
You know
wanted
what?
to
You know who's
have
still
a little
around?
fun. You could flip
Bolo
it and
Young.
gender flip
Let's
it.
let's
and
get Bolo Young back.
Get
He can age into the James Hong role.
Lily
yeah.
Bing or you're one of the I'm saying her name wrong. What is it? Shoot. You know what I'm talking about. In the Meg. I gotta find the name. I gotta find that name because I can't say that. I'll get destroyed for not knowing it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
she is. I don't know why she didn't come back for this.
I know who you're talking about. I don't remember her name.
Lee Beanbing. Okay, let me say. You know, if you want to ginger flip the Tran character, you get Lee Beanbing to do it.
She's a lot of fun
So,
in the make. I will
why
say
not?
that.
If it was 10 years ago, you get Michelle Yeoh. So, but
Lee Bing Bing.
she, I think, yeah, she may be a little beyond the. Well, this movie's
Great
never going to
choice.
get made anyway, so whatever. But you know what though?
Yeah,
Because
I
I
don't think
used
you can get
AI to
Michelle Yeoh now.
create
She might be a
the
little
plot
too,
summary. I'm now going to go program it
demand
with
for
this to
that,
see if I can
but-
see what it would come up with. That.
Yeah.
Didn't they all get run out of the business?
I'm sure Golan and or Globus have a nephew or a cousin or some
one of those amazing Hollywood
shithead.
How did that happen?
Nepo baby who wants to make a name for him or herself.
I mean, that's the story of the movie town in America. But this has been our story here on this episode, folks. Thanks for joining us. You can follow the show's social media at FilmStripPod on most of those platforms that still exist. If you go to filmstrippodcast.com, you'll see a link to all of our distribution. You'll find where we're on all of your podcast platforms of choice, Apple, Google, Spotify, all those. There's our link to our letterbox page that eventually we'll get around to organizing, things like that. But if you go to Film Strip Pod, mostly you're just going to get lots of tweets and messages from Ron, and occasionally me and Lindsay will pop in and let you know what's going on with the show. And we'll have a lot of back and forth and a lot of fun. Leave us a positive review, helps other people find the show. Share it on your socials as well, because we appreciate the support. Until next time, for Ron, I'm Jay. Thank you for listening to Film Strip.
Thank you for listening to Film Strip. You can find more episodes on our website, filmstrippodcast.com. The Film Strip theme music is produced and performed by Frozen Lake 121. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504, C2, Title 17.